Redding is a beautiful place. We have national parks in 3 different directions, 2 world-class lakes. This is a sportsman's paradise, but it's also full of wonderful people. We have business leaders, community leaders, faith-based leaders, all of them working towards a singular goal, and that's to make this a great place to live. I wanted to showcase these people, give their perception of the place that they call home. This is AllRedding. We ready to rock and roll? I'm here with Vice Mayor Adam McElvain, not Councilman McElvain, but Vice Mayor. That's pretty cool, man.
It's interesting for sure, but yeah, that's what they call me now.
So how do they do that? Is it like a rotation or vote? Like, does everybody take turns?
Traditionally every year it just rotates to a new council member based on your seniority on the council.
So what is the state of the city of Redding right now? Like, what's going on? What are some?
Right now in Redding, the economy is doing exceptionally well, despite the Carr Fire. And we'll get into that later, but it's doing exceptionally well. Our unemployment is at 4.8% in the city of Redding, and that's the lowest that it's been since they actually started the unemployment record keeping in like 1990. So,
really?
Yeah, so we know it's the lowest unemployment that it's been in 30 years, probably much longer. So that's exciting because that's thousands of people 6 or 7 years ago that weren't working, that now have jobs. They're able to support a family, to find housing. It's a tremendously positive thing. The other side of the coin, we also have a lot of investment right now in Redding. There are several projects going on downtown, close to here, actually, that look like, I think the total is about $300 million of investment in the downtown.
We had Jake Mangus on, that's what he was saying. It was
over the next 3 to 4 years. Yep. And when you look at the citywide, we have about $700 million of projects that have either been permitted or going through the permit process.
Wow.
So a lot of major projects, a lot of major things happening, a lot of investment. And that's exciting to see in the city, especially as a city council person, to see growth like that in the city and see positive trends.
What are some of the driving factors for that? Like, is there one thing, or is it just?
Well, I think the unemployment. The city's done a great job at reducing fees, reducing regulation, things of that nature that tend to spur economic activity. But I would say the majority of what's influencing our unemployment rate is from the national level. And local investment, I think, it was just so dry there for so many years where nobody was doing anything that it kind of
post real estate bubble.
Well, yeah, actually,
because that slowed everything down.
Right. And I think people, maybe there was some pent up investment ready to go, but there's definitely a lot of big projects going on. You have the Costco project down there on Bonneview, and then across the street, there's all kinds of things going in on the east side of that interchange, the Save More. You have, it sounds like the Rancheria is getting ready to put together their plans for the casino, which will be right there next to, just south of Costco, behind the Hilton Garden Inn. You have, then the Vets Clinic was approved off Knighton Road, which is a major project.
Yeah, that is.
You have Bethel Church is doing a new campus.
Like a 90 million or...
I think it was 96 or 98 million. Big. Yeah, right there just to the west of Shasta College. And then downtown you have the new courthouse. The McConnell Foundation is doing a partnership with K2 Development. Actually, I just like right on the other side of that building over there. Then, of course, you have the K2 building going in right over here. And there's some other mid-rise projects going on downtown. We might have 4 construction cranes operating in the downtown at the same time.
Wow.
Which would be kind of an amazing sight.
Redding's all grown up.
Something's happening. Yeah, something's happening. So it's exciting. There's a lot of energy, a lot of positivity, and it's definitely fun to be on the city council and see that happening and see that progress. Public safety, is we're continuing to keep public safety our top priority. And we just actually hired 4 more community service officers.
I saw that
the other night. So we're doubling that part of the police force. We had 4 previously, and community service officers are typically to the taxpayer a lot less expensive than a regular officer, but they do more of the administrative work so that our sworn officers can do more of the proactive work.
Oh, okay. I was about to ask what a community safety officer was.
Yeah,
that's more something.
Community service officer responds to cold calls. They do administrative work, crowd control. So they don't carry a sidearm. So they're not a sworn officer. But what they can do is reduce our response times. If your home or your car, or your business is broken into, or there's a burglary, they can respond to that. And we really need to reduce those response times and do a good job providing the public safety service that we need to the city. So
okay, I want to talk about public safety because this is something, and maybe I just it's my frame of reference, but I hear the term crime, and then it's followed by someone stole my gas can. I'm like, that doesn't. I realize that that is a crime, but we're not having the stabbings and the shootings. And I mean, we have Redding has in the area. We've got over 100,000 people. I mean, the area.
I think it's 130,000 during the day.
Okay, so like our percentage, I don't have any numbers for this, but like the national average or the state average of like shootings, stabbings, or I guess what we call like violent crime. Do you have any numbers like that? We have to be way below average, or else it's hidden from me.
Our violent crime is so low that it changes wildly every year. So one year we might have 2 homicides, and then the next year we may have 4. So then it's a doubling or 100% increase in homicides.
Yeah.
When you realize that it's really small. So yeah, violent crime is something.
There's lies, there's damn lies, and then there's statistics.
That's right.
So yeah.
So in Redding, violent crime is not the biggest issue. It's still a serious thing, and it's still something that needs to be taken very seriously. But what we're affected by is the quality of life crimes. And after the
You're talking about like theft?
Yeah, theft, burglaries, potentially domestic violence, assault, things of that nature, grand theft auto.
Outside of domestic violence, or in the home, is there a lot of assault, or is this more of what I mean? Like, are there fist fights in the streets and I'm not hearing it or not seeing it? I'm staying on the right street, or what?
I'd have to look. I'd probably have to look at the new statistics. What I know from this year is that all of the categories of crime are down, except car theft and sexual crime. So there are 2 that are up. Yeah, the sexual crime has been spiking for about 6 months.
Really?
Unusual
trend. That's a fire engine, right? But the sound effect is fantastic, right?
Yeah, so we're not, our police department isn't 100% sure what's going on, but they're very focused on that right now, the sexual crime that's gone up. So we'll see. I haven't gotten a full presentation on that because it's something that started, I want to say June or July of last year. But all other crimes are down. Car theft is still a big one that we see here.
Crime, theft, none of it's good, but I'll take car theft over murder. Do you know what I mean? And so that's why, like, when I hear about public safety and I hear about crime, I think that we're in such a comfortable place, and our crime is so low that, like you said, there were 2 murders one year, there were 4 the next year, and it was like, oh, murder's gone up 100%. It's like, okay, then the next year, if it's there were 2 murders, it's down by 50%. So those numbers, they get kind of thrown around, and I don't think they paint a real picture of like, hey, there's not a lot of crime here, and the kind of crime it is personal property, which is not good, but it's better than. I mean, I don't know what the national average is per 100,000, like deaths per 100,000.
Well, that's the.
I think it'd be higher than 2, though.
That's one of the issues that we have, at least from a sort of a public relations perspective on the city itself. Is if you do look at the national averages, we're pretty high per capita on the quality of life crimes. So it doesn't look good from an outside.
Pretty low on the violent.
Violent crime is not a. We don't stand out from anyone, but we definitely are in the wrong side of the spectrum, or the percentile that we want to be.
Well, I wonder if
it comes to the quality of life per capita.
I wonder if it's I'm not a social scientist, so I don't know, but I mean, if you live in a neighborhood that has a lot of violent crime, you're less likely to call the police over your gas can being stolen. If you live in a neighborhood where, the Andy Griffith neighborhood, and you come out and somebody took your fresh apple pie out of the window where it was cooling, you call the sheriff. So I wonder if the very nature of, the volume of reports is a sign of how good things are, right? Like if you're getting shot at, you get what I'm going.
I understand what you're saying, but there's definitely a difference in trends post real estate bubble since the Great Recession. So there's definitely, we can look at the trends that we've had in the city of Redding over those years. And, our police department sends out a survey every year to the citizens to fill out to find out what their biggest concerns are. And for years, I want to say till maybe 2007 or 2008, the number one concern by far was traffic in Redding. Which, if you've lived in a big city, you know that traffic is not an issue.
I think you're making my point.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, traffic. Yeah, it might be actually. That's a good point.
Go spend a couple of weeks in Los Angeles, then come back and tell me how horrible the Redding traffic is.
I think in 2008, I think maybe traffic was 78% of people's number one concern in Redding. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think, but I don't, that's not necessarily a bad thing that our citizens expect the best. And I think, we want to do everything we can on the council to address those issues, keep people safe, protect people's property. That's our number one role and responsibility as a city government, is to protect, people's safety and their property. Absolutely, hands down. And I look at it like, on the federal level, as they do with the military. The military is the number one thing that you want to make sure it's fully funded. You want to make sure they have all the right gear, that they have all the right resources they need to do to get the job done. And that's it. It's just black and white. And so for me, that's our law enforcement and police department, is that we've got to make sure that they're adequately funded and that they have all the resources that they need to take care of the city. Primary role, primary responsibility. So. And I think things are trending in the right direction. A lot of that, again, has to do with kind of the amalgamation of everything that I've been talking about, with unemployment going down, more people working. There's so many things trending in the right direction right now that 6 or 7 years ago were not. None of them were.
One of the things that I don't see as much, and you see what you're looking for, but there was a time when it seemed like methamphetamines was like really rampant, and it was just really affecting law enforcement, and it's still there, but you might have some numbers on this. It seems like it's gone way down. Has it not? Am I just not looking for it and so I don't see it? Or
it's
because that's a huge catalyst for crime, like violent crime, theft, right? Like that's a
yes.
Oh
yeah. And they're absolutely tied together. The issue that we're having now is with heroin. And I think if you back up and you take where we are at present day, the heroin epidemic sprang from the overprescription of opioids for many years, maybe a decade or more. And then when new regulations were put in place that made it much more difficult to prescribe opium, that they put some higher standards in there, opioids. That's when this cheap form of heroin sort of really became prevalent, and it's very pernicious. I can't remember when somebody first told me, but it was less expensive to get high off heroin than it was off of beer. It's cheaper to go out and buy heroin now than alcohol, and that's an unbelievable.
It doesn't sound right, but I have heard that like that. Only news reports the same thing. Nationally we change people from opiates. They naturally hit the street and went with heroin.
Right. When you look at the statistics of drug use, especially over the past 100 years, it really seems to hover around. There's just a certain percentage of people that are going to abuse drugs, and that percentage stays pretty true to the same amount of people that do it. So I see it more of as a closed loop, and so I would say the use of methamphetamines from in this area from 10 or 20 years ago is probably down, but the total percentage of people abusing illicit substances, controlled substances, is probably the same or higher than it's always been.
Okay, so maybe
it's just heroin's the drug of choice.
The methamphetamines, you seem to get the real violent, right? And the heroin, it seemed like you got the more passive. So yes, like theft is going to go up, but there's going to be less stabbings. And maybe that goes back to how we started this conversation, where we've seen so as you transition people from methamphetamines to heroin, they're stabbing less people, but they're stealing more of their stuff. So now you have I don't know. That's a huge conjecture.
You might,
but
yeah,
you know
you might
I mean?
have to. Yeah, you might have to get a police officer on here. But
Anybody notice that? Like, they're less aggressive. I don't know. And that was about that same time that there was. I don't know.
Are you saying our panhandlers have a better demeanor than they used to?
This aggression will not stand, man.
Yeah.
There's a level of aggression I can handle
Yeah.
from panhandlers, and then there's a line that, like, no.
I don't.
get
Yeah,
aggressive with
you'd
me.
have to have a different expert on in that area.
Okay.
So I'm not sure.
Okay.
But and I've made some assumptions here too on some of these issues with drugs. Methamphetamine might be as high a use as it was 10 or 20 years ago, but I don't believe it is, and I haven't seen anything that would lead me to believe that. But heroin is definitely top of the list. That cheap street heroin that sort of appeared 4 or 5 years ago.
So, okay, after we have public safety, obviously the economy is doing really well. I want to talk about Carr Fire and, the effect that had on Redding. But what's like the number 3 thing that the city, what's another big topic that you guys, when you guys
one of the biggest issues for me is affordable housing, and California is going through a transition right now, and it's harder and harder for people that are lower middle class or poor to find adequate housing, and it's getting more and more difficult in the state of California, and it's something that we have a shortage of now, and it's something that I see us really having to push to tackle this issue because it's such a big deal. And interestingly enough, when I got on the council, I had the issues that I wanted to tackle, and then I wanted to be really proactive with some of the things that I thought could really change the city and things that I'm still working on. But at the same time, you also have to look into the future and say, here's what our biggest problems are going to be in 5 to 10 years and try and mitigate those problems. And so for one of those for me is affordable housing. And that's a big deal. And again, it's the number, I'd say if you polled people right now, the number 1 issues in Redding are public safety and homelessness. And the best way to have an impact on homelessness is to have more affordable housing.
Really?
It's absolutely hands down the best way, proven all over the country that the availability of affordable housing. Well, it's the bottom of the pyramid, and people are slipping off, right?
I just wonder how many of them are slipping off because they couldn't actually afford rent versus how many of them are slipping off due to mental illness and drug and alcohol abuse. You know what I mean?
That's definitely a big factor. Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. But so is, I think, you're talking about that one moment when somebody transitions maybe from having housing to not having housing. And it's, there's several different factors that can cause that. Obviously, the Great Recession had a tremendous impact on that, more so than mental health issues or substance abuse, but can contribute to that. You want people to be able to stay in a stable environment. You want people to have access to a stable environment because as soon as they lose that shelter, this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Shelter is the very bottom, physical safety and shelter. So as soon as you lose that shelter, everything else is up in the air. So the access to affordable housing not only helps prevent people from slipping into homelessness, but makes it much easier to escape from homelessness.
How much of our affordable housing, when you talk about affordable housing, and you compare Redding to the state, we have some of the most affordable housing for the state of California. When you compare it to, say the Midwest, it's, no, you guys are way higher than, you could buy a castle in Nebraska for what you'd buy,
Yes.
But at the same time, you couldn't get a 1-bedroom apartment in major cities for what you could buy a nice home for in Redding. So how much of it is just this, like how much can you guys affect it, or how much can the city truly affect?
When you look at that lower middle class, low income housing and that range, we don't see nearly as much being developed as we need. And so what the city can do is remove barriers, reduce regulation, reduce fees, encourage the development in that specific area. And we've taken a lot of steps towards doing that. We reduced fees. We reduced fees even more on multifamily. So quadplexes, duplexes, apartment buildings, things of that nature, so that it is easier for investors to come in and build those. But nobody was building affordable housing for a long time. There was a stretch there too where there wasn't any low income housing being built in Redding.
I remember there was a couple of projects. There was one behind the city hall back there where they were building. I remember I went in, I toured them when they were, and I was like, wow, these are really nice. Like, it was like the bamboo floors and, and it was communal areas and stuff like that.
But you're talking like 2005, right?
Yeah. That's the last time I heard of these types of projects. I don't know if you consider projects like K2 or...
No, so K2 isn't affordable. I mean, they're a large, and that's a great project. So there is...
Are those going to be like condominiums or are those going to be apartments?
I'm pretty sure they're apartments.
Okay.
Yeah, fairly certain they're apartments, but there are some affordable housing projects going on right now that are very positive and that are huge importance to the community. So it is gearing back up, and we're seeing more of that.
When you use the term affordable, do we have like actual metrics like monthly price? What is it more just?
We have a lot of pressure on our rental market right now, and I don't know if you used to be in real estate, but rental rates for housing are very high in Redding right now.
Well, we did lose 1,100 homes in inventory.
Right.
We probably have an influx from the Camp Fire and Paradise. I mean, that's
I think
huge
there's
impact.
Probably there's three factors. Obviously, Bethel Church has had a tremendous impact on our rental market. So there's definitely pressure there. One of the things when we voted to regulate marijuana in Redding, we also eliminated the ability to grow outdoors. So we growing outdoors now is prohibited in the city.
Okay.
But we've pretty much agreed to the regulation on every other level of the industry. And so then in other cities where that has happened, there has been pressure put on the rental market because people now buy rentals to grow marijuana in the rentals.
Sure.
So there's that added pressure. And then, of course, the Carr Fires created a tremendous amount of pressure. So you have to think, who does that impact the most? And it's the people at the bottom. It's the people that are falling off at the bottom, where those rents that maybe 2-3 years ago were $700 a month for a 2-bedroom, maybe now are closer to $900 to $1,000.
Okay.
So there are some issues, and that's the thing. We've got the people really want us focused on public safety and homelessness, and that biggest part of maintaining the best way that we can prevent and help homelessness is to make sure that we have adequate affordable housing as a city. Yep.
I would have thought that again, addressing mental health.
Well, hold on a second.
And drugs.
So I got to split this up. So the city isn't responsible for any social services.
Okay.
That's the county government.
Okay.
So the county government does mental health. A lot of those other support services, young mothers, welfare, that's all run through the county government. So the city we do provide some low-income housing vouchers through the federal government. So we're basically just a conduit for the federal government into Redding. So we manage that. So we do have some affordable housing vouchers, and we can do some different things with affordable housing. So as far as those other social services, the city, that's not the city's role, and that's not, the taxpayer money doesn't go to the city to work on those issues.
What about, you hear AB 109? Okay, so I'm not really well versed on it, meaning that equates I don't know what I'm talking about. So can you tell me about AB 109, and do we have is this a place where the rest of the state gets to dump certain people?
Well, we're the regional hub for this area, so we're not getting people that were convicted in, say, Oakland or Los Angeles being dropped off in Redding. That's not happening. But we are the regional hub, so we're getting people from the North State that may not be from Redding, but committed a crime somewhere in the North State.
How far south?
I don't know exactly what the region is. I don't. No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
But the fact is that we are going through probably what would be considered the biggest prison experiment in the history of mankind. And I know that sounds pretty heavy.
No, I know what you mean.
There's nothing traceable.
The governor just getting rid of the death penalty for 737
right, and that was
or something like that.
Yeah, that was pretty significant.
Yeah.
And so it's a tough situation to be in California. Obviously, things are very expensive. we were mandated by the state was mandated by the federal government to reduce its prison population due to health and human safety issues. And I think probably there's a large amount of criminals that live in California. I mean, the state is huge. It's like 40 million people. So obviously you're going to have a lot of people that commit crime just because you have the sheer number of people. And so, I mean, I think other states probably would have built more prisons to hold people, to keep people incarcerated. The state of California has gone through this prison release program, and it's sort of an unbelievable experience because of how taxing it is on our resources here locally. I mean, our jail filled up. Our jail used to be an adequate supply of jail cells and beds. But with the early release of all the prisoners, now we have, it's, I want to say 350 people in the area commit 60 or 70% of the crime. So if we had, if we had 300 more jail beds, more than half of our crime would be eliminated.
Really?
Right, because these are serious repeat offenders.
There's an extreme example of Pareto's law there, the 20/80 rule.
Right.
You got 1%, less than 1% committing 350 people. I mean, that's not even...
Oh, yeah. Our officers arrest the same person 30, 40 times over a couple-year period. And it's just such a horrible situation to be in, because not that our officers don't have enough to deal with, being a police officer in this day and age, but having to see the same person and keep arresting them for the same or similar offenses that they should be incarcerated for has got to be incredibly demoralizing.
But that's a county issue because it's a county jail, right?
Yes,
the county
and that was something when I first got on the council. I was very proud that the council talked about this publicly, but we did talk about the jail space being the bottleneck in our justice system here locally. And the county has found the resources to open 100 new beds in the jail. And they did that, I want to say, in December or January of this year. So that's starting to fill up. And we're getting more serious repeat offenders off the street. So it's a big deal. When the new courthouse is built, they plan on there's 2 courtrooms currently housed inside of the jail. Those courtrooms will move into the new courthouse once it's constructed, and then they'll have room for an additional 128 jail beds in the current jail. So that'll be 238 beds more than we had a year ago. So that's going to have a significant impact. It's going to help our police department. It's going to help the sheriff's department. It's going to help everybody that's trying to get a handle on this crime issue. But again, we're just kind of bystanders in this big experiment of prison release that the world's really never seen before. This massive amount of people being released. This
is the state level. This is the former governor and the current governor and their agenda.
Yep.
It
was the federal government that said, "Hey, you gotta fix this." It wasn't Governor Brown that just said, "Hey, I want to release a bunch of prisoners." I mean, he had a mandate from the federal courts.
Really?
That something had to be done, right? But I think, again, as I said, I think probably most states would have decided to build some more prisons to house the, to keep people incarcerated that had been convicted. We'll see where it goes. We're doing the best that we can here. We're working really hard. Everybody's doing their best and trying to make a safe city for Redding. But we're dealing with these external factors that we have no control over.
This can get it gets overwhelming when you start to go down the rabbit hole and you start thinking, you know what I mean? Because you're sitting here thinking about like, okay, now we could talk about the impact of incarcerating Americans off of nonviolent crimes, and
right.
At what point do you take a nonviolent criminal and then subjugate them to violent criminals, and then they become violent criminal? Mm-hmm. Like there's some kind of graduation process. So let's get off that topic because that's a big one. I know I'd like to.
I don't have the answers either. I don't
think anybody does.
So somebody that would be really good to talk to about that stuff would be the chief of police.
Okay.
Chief Moore. He's got all that information. He understands it very well and knows all the programs. He's involved with all that stuff. So he'd be really...
Well, maybe we can get him on here.
Yeah. Yeah, he'd be a good guest.
We were talking about the Carr Fire and the impact it had on the city. What are some of the things the city council has been able to do or the city's been able to do to try to help rebuild? What are some projects?
So the city has been really on top of this. And the Carr Fire was sort of this we hope, that it's this once in a generation event, and it was, incredibly traumatic. There's still a lot of pain and grief, and a lot of that will be around for a generation. We'll never lose it completely. So, we're very sad for everyone that lost their property. And if you look at it, the breakup of the property that was lost, I think there were 1,100 homes in the county, and then about 260 in the city limits. So within the city limits, the city's been working very hard. First of all, the response to the Carr Fire the day of, and the week after, and the month after from the city, I would give the city probably an A or an A+. And that really goes to city manager Barry Tippin and his leadership team. The response was unbelievable. How well the city responded to that. One of the things, though, that we had an advantage was we were able to look at other cities that had experienced the same thing within the last year or two, and call on them. Correct. Call on them, ask them the steps that they went through, what processes they took. So we did have that advantage, but the response was absolutely phenomenal. The city's taken a lot of steps to, if somebody lost their home, of those 260 homes, and they want to rebuild, they don't have to pay any impact fees, which is a tremendous amount. We're talking $30,000 or $40,000 per home. Nice. They can build whatever they want. They can build whatever size they want when they come back. We also reduced the other one fee, which is a planning fee, maybe $3,000 to $5,000, and we reduced that. I want to say 50%. So for people to rebuild, they're looking at maybe $1,500 cost to the city. And that's even something where we're probably providing some subsidy there to do that, because of the time it actually just takes the city to review those things. Mm-hmm. So we're working very hard doing what we can, because we want to see as much rebuilt as possible, because it impacts the values of the other homes around in those neighborhoods. We have, I want to say, out of the 260, we have 65 or 70 permits pulled now. Already? Yes. Wow. And I think we're over 20 permitted. That's in less than a year. That's moving really fast. Oh yeah, that's really that's fast. 6 months. That's 20%. My goal has been to get to 50% rebuild. Santa Rosa is not even close to anything. That's what I was thinking when you said that. I was like, it was like a year later in Santa Rosa. They had like 8. Exactly. Not even 1%. So think that almost 30% or probably 25% have pulled, and that's huge. Yep. So we're doing everything we can to encourage those to rebuild, and that stays with the lot. So if somebody wants to sell their lot and somebody else wants to come in and build on that lot, they're not going to have to pay any fees. So that'll stay with those lots indefinitely. Okay. So that's something that's always going to be an advantage from, even going down the road, is if you are, say you want to build a new house, and there's still some of these Carr Fire lots, in some of these neighborhoods that haven't been built on, that may be the lot that you want, because you're not going to pay any impact fees to build there, whereas in other places in the city you would. So there'll always be that economic incentive to rebuild on those lots. So, we're working really hard to make sure that everything goes smoothly. We created an express line at the permitting department for people that were victims of the Carr Fire. Literally? Okay. Created an express line. So we hired 2 retired annuitants that used to work in the planning department, and that's all they handle. So people get sped through if they're coming through to very good for the Carr Fire. Very good. Yeah. The other, the other issue I want to talk about is what do we do? What's the next step? And it's, we want to find the best path forward as far as what we can do to prevent another Carr Fire from happening. So the city has about 20% of the city is open space. And we're 63 square miles, and 15 to 20% of the city is open space. So areas that are prone to fire, maybe not severe fire, but definitely areas that are prone to fire. So we're talking several square miles within the city proper that we need to pay attention to, and that we need to make sure are mitigated for future fires. And Tuesday night, just this last Tuesday night, the council approved, we were able to use cap and trade funds from the electric utility for fire mitigation. So we approved $2 million to do the entire city, everything, the full scope of everything that we're looking at. we feel is somewhere between $3 and $5 million. So if we're going down and try and cut down every bush and every sapling and every place that we needed to clean up in the city, the cost that we're looking at is probably $3 to $5 million to clean that up. The other thing that we're looking at right now is we're looking at potentially hiring 24 more firefighters. That would work through the electric utility. So after the Carr Fire and then the Camp Fire, which obviously was much more severe in that area, and there was a lot more damage, the state now is making requirements on all utilities. So electric utilities, public and private, that they need to mitigate for fire dangers around their properties, around their power lines, and that they need to be prepared to prevent fires from affecting that property or other people's properties. So
does that feel like, when you say that feels like a knee-jerk reaction, almost in the wrong way? My thought is, what could the city of Redding really done to have stopped the fire that was coming in from the national forest, right? It starts out in the national forest, right? Okay. It comes in. I mean, by the time it was even close to city, because I remember going out, and it was a few miles away, and it was surreal, like this wall of fire. So I'm like, could the city of Redding really, oh wow, you guys could have done so much to prevent it. It's like, I don't think. Not from what I saw.
It's hard to tell because it was a steamroller.
It
just rolled into town.
It feels more like the national forest needs to, and like that's who, and less the city park wasn't cleaned up.
Well, so no, if you go through Sunset neighborhood over there on the northwest side of town, there's an area I remember distinctly because I had a tour of all the affected areas probably 3 days after the fire, and went around with the fire chief, and it was obviously a heartbreaking experience, but. There was an area I remember where there was a group of homes out on sort of out exposed to the urban wildland interface, and the homes were still there. And I said, "Hey, why are those homes still there?" And they said, "Well, they had a 200-foot break between them and and they maintained it." So those homes were saved, and so it is really important. And so we're looking.
I know what you're talking about because my wife's grandmother's house burned down, and she was on the edge.
Okay.
And so have the green belt, and there were some homes on another hill, the newer construction, and you're like, how did that come up here and not there? And it's like, if you looked, it's just the vegetation was cleaned out more. Yeah.
So you want to do everything that you can. So now, right? So the state's mandating that electric utilities do this fire prevention. So what we're looking at is hiring probably 12 to 24 firefighters. That would work as we'd have a strike team, an actual strike team, and these firefighters are similar to firefighter apprentices, so they're not full-fledged firefighters. They're kind of more of the temporary crews and things like that. So they're definitely less expensive than a full-fledged firefighter or engineer, and they go out and. The strike team would go out when there's an actual fire happening within the city, and then create lines and stuff to try and, instead of them going to fight the fire, they're going to try and make sure that the fire is contained immediately.
Got it.
And then the other group would be potentially 12 more firefighters that are constantly going out and mitigating the fire areas. So basically, when we look at all these square miles that need to be maintained to prevent these fires from happening again, we have to do 20% of that per year. So we have kind of the 5-year cycle. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Before that stuff grows back. So we have to do 20% a year. So we kind of need to get to that level of where we're.
That makes more sense now that when you told me, hey, 12 to 24 more firefighters, it's like, okay, what you're really talking about is maintenance. What you're talking about is keeping the areas less versus if only 24 guys would have showed up in a couple of trucks, we would have been able to, it's like,
Oh, no. This is for maintenance purposes, and then the strike team. So we'll see where that's going. I think that'll come back to, we gave the city manager to move forward with that here a week or two ago. So we'll find out within a month or two.
So is that a tax on REU that's going to pay for that? You said that's the
So REU would pay for it.
Does that mean the rates are going to go up?
No, it doesn't look like it will have any immediate impact on rates.
So REU is just sitting on surplus of funds, and because REU is a nonprofit, right?
Right. It has to run as a nonprofit, and keep in mind this is using the electric utility. This is now a state requirement.
Got it.
I mean, this is something that now we have to figure out.
Got it.
And you maybe disagree with the state policy, but this is something that now we're required to do.
I'm not anti. My knee-jerk reaction to these things is that the people that always think add a tax is the solution, that they tax and throw money and tax and throw money. If that were the solution, why is it that we're constantly revisiting it? So I kind of, my natural apprehension is anytime there's, you know what we need? We need to tax more and have a government entity handle the money. I always recoil from that. You know what I mean? I know that you need it sometimes. It needs to be a percentage of, like the overall solutions. A percentage is, hey, we need a tax, we need the communal funds. But I feel like we go through these cycles where we have monstrous taxation and then we have deregulation. We you know what I mean? We're going through the cycle over and over. And it feels like there's always an emotional trigger to the taxation, right? So the Carr Fire is absolutely horrible, but can we have a moderate, long-term solution that's sustainable versus this, like, you know what we need? We just need to tax more and then do this. And it's like, okay, is this going to collapse in 7 years? And then, we're going to have it, we can't fund it anymore. And then the reverse is that we deregulate too much. And then sure enough, 10 years later, there's bushes everywhere in the fire and and the whole cycle starts over and over. So that's why I was asking.
We're absolutely looking for a permanent solution of maintenance.
Okay.
That we can do.
And affordable.
And that would, exactly, affordable, and that will work for our city and again, protect people's lives and property.
Sure, absolutely. That's number one.
We're moving forward with that. We'll see how it turns out and what the final recommendation is and where the council stands on that. But I think it's really important that we, that we do get a solution in place, not a knee-jerk solution, but, a well-crafted and well-thought-out solution so that we don't run into this, trouble again.
How many people are on the city council?
5.
So is there this is going to be you may not like this question. Do you think there's a balance of opinions and views on the city council right now? Are we swayed one way or the other? Because this is a great social experiment that we're, is it
in respect to what though? Swayed.
So do we have? Are there people that are like, hey, you know what we need to do? We need more government spending. We need bigger government. And they're countered with people like, no, what we need to do is empower more business and entrepreneurialism. Is it balanced right now? Do you feel comfortable with that question?
I would say it's I would say it's probably very centered.
Okay.
In that respect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm a unabashed capitalist. So I always...
Isn't everyone?
No, no, man.
Okay.
They're not.
Okay.
No. The downfall of America I put directly on the back of the soy latte industry. No, there's just a lot of people who think that the government can always solve the problems, forgetting that the government is actually a collection of human beings, and the very nature of taxation and corralling the money and then administrating the money is a tax on the tax. And so I kind of I'm not laissez-faire market, but I lean towards, like what you said, hey, here's what we're going to do to help with the Carr Fire. We're going to reduce the fees associated with rebuilding on those lots. We're going to have an express lane. That's not, we're going to subsidize. I guess you did say we're subsidize a little bit, but to me, I like those kind of incentives because what it does is it lets the marketplace come in and people say, you know what? Let's rebuild here.
Yeah.
This is financially very feasible.
I honestly think, too, that coming up with those incentives so quickly after the fire is the reason that we're at 25% of the people rebuilding.
Versus Santa Rosa, less than 1% a year later.
Right, is because we said, hey, we want you to rebuild. We're going to do everything we can to help you rebuild. We want you to rebuild whatever you want. And, the city's going to be your partner in making this happen and be your advocate. So it's... we want people to know that we're on their side, and we want, we want to see the neighborhoods rebuilt.
Absolutely,
it's really important.
Yeah, no, that's especially if you live in that neighborhood. I mean, that's a huge impact on the housing. Is if the subdivision that you live in has been devastated.
Well, plus I can't imagine. I mean, my wife's folks lost their home, and they're rebuilding. They're in the county though.
I heard that. My wife told me that the other night.
Yeah, they're actually to the point of framing right now. But when we would go out there and look at the lot, man, it's really depressing. And I can't imagine, being in some of these neighborhoods and you look out the window and you're across the street or
it looks like a bomb went off. We were just out Swayze the other day, and it was. Yeah, that's.
Oh, it does. No, it does.
It looks like a bomb went off.
Courtney and I were here when the fire started at Whiskey Town. Because remember, it started a few days before.
I heard French Gulch had been evacuated and didn't think, well, it's coming. Like, we'll stop it.
Especially when they said French Gulch, it sounded like it's going north or something.
Yeah, they'll stop it way before. Yeah, never thought.
So then we left to go to a family reunion out of state, which had been planned for several years. And then that Thursday night, or I think Thursday morning when I got the first serious email from the city manager, and we're out of state and we're just glued to we're watching our phones for like 14 hours a day, because just watching everything unfold, and which I'm sure a lot of people locally were doing. We're also, not just seeing it here, but paying attention to everything on social media and what everybody else was going through. But it's probably, for our first responders, our policemen and firefighters, it's probably the most traumatic event that they'll experience in their careers, the most intense event. And again, I can't help but look at it as like a military, from a military perspective, where we sort of had this enemy at the gates, that was relentless, that had no, no tank or gun or anything was going to stop this thing. It's random. It's bent on death and destruction, and what do you do? And so, I just couldn't be prouder that our guys went out and took it on, and they saved a lot of homes. I mean, they went out and worked really hard.
Saved a lot of lives.
Saved a lot of homes, got people evacuated. But that's intense, man, to see your own city kind of under attack like that.
Yeah.
And the strange part is, like, again, with the military, is you go out and it looks like war zone.
Yep.
It looks like something like that. So, pretty intense, man. I hope it never happens again.
Okay, so we talked about the Carr Fire, but there's a couple of topics that I want to talk about. The high-speed internet, and we talked about how the city of Redding could be its own internet service provider. I think it potentially have a huge financial impact on Redding, initially with business, but then housing. I think it's one of those big catalysts for very positive things going on in Redding. So can you tell us where that project is and kind of bring us up to speed on that?
I agree. So that was a proposal that I put together that I've been working on now for over a year. And what it is it's to bring high-speed internet, gigabit fiber, symmetrical service to the businesses and residents that are in the downtown. And not just that it's available, but that it's very affordable. So basically what we're talking about is providing an internet service that's a much higher level of service at a fraction of the cost of what people are currently paying. And I agree, I think it'll have just tremendous economic impact. It will attract young people. It'll benefit our businesses. It'll draw other businesses to Redding. And it's really one of the things that I wanted to do to help ensure the longevity of our city and that our city remains relevant for the next century. We were a timber, we were mining industry city, and then we were a timber city. And, what can I do to help make sure that Redding stays strong and vibrant economically and a place where there's plenty of opportunity for everybody. So I think this will have a tremendous impact. In December of 2017 is when I got permission from the city council to move forward with this proposal, and I'd identified some partners that were going to work with us completely pro bono. So this is no cost to the city, and I always knew that in order to be able to make this work that I couldn't take any money for public safety, and I didn't want to take any money from public safety. I want to get as many dollars to our police and fire departments as I can. So we're working with a group out of Chico State University, their Economic Development Consortium. And then we're also working with a group called Broadband USA, which is part of the National Telecommunications and Information Administration under the Department of Commerce in Washington, D.C. So we're working with two very credible groups that have worked on numerous other municipally owned fiber projects, both in the state of California and across the country. So those folks, we've been working in earnest since last January. The city manager and I met with a handful of consultants, January, February, March, people within the industry. And then we really started in earnest on the network design for our downtown last March. And then what was interesting is we did our final technical walkthrough of the downtown with the network engineer that came up from Chico and then another one from San Francisco, where we actually physically walked around downtown to make sure that the network design, it's like, hey, this pole to this pole, and we own these poles and everything's going to work, to make sure that the network design was fully legitimate. So we did the
and you got a green light on that, inspection. Thumbs up on that one.
So this was July 17th. So the network engineer went back to Chico, and then the next week was the Carr Fire.
Oh man!
And so this group that we're working with is also does the GIS work for Chico. So they were immediately tasked with creating maps for the Carr Fire for different agencies for different reasons. So things were delayed for a while, and then we got back to it, and then of course the campfire happened.
Yeah.
So then things were delayed again. And we got about mid-January, got together to put the final touches on everything. So now we have the network design, we have cost engineering analysis for the network. Our market survey isn't quite what we wanted it to be. And this is something that I'm going to be presenting to the council here at the next meeting or two. So I don't want to go too far into the details because I haven't presented this information fully to the council. But I'm really excited with the results. Everything is, and surprisingly, everything is going as I predicted that it would, as far as costs and what we're capable of doing. What's the most fascinating to me probably is that the options that we have far exceed what my original vision was for the downtown. So we have some really amazing options of what we can do to really benefit the city. Really expand innovation, transform how we communicate in the city, even intergovernmental agency communication, different private sector communication. So this is a big deal, and I mean, for me, this is kind of I don't want to get too far into it. I could come back on later after I've given the presentation to the City Council, but it really feels kind of like an Internet 3.0. I mean, it's like we're on to sort of a new. A new thing here, and it's going to be, when you look at the electric utility and what it provides to our city, the biggest benefit is economic development. Because if you look at 2018 and what people paid in electric rates in the city of Redding in 2018, and then you compare that to the PG&E rate structure, which is what the county has, which surrounds the city, RU saved ratepayers in Redding $50 million in 2018. Mm-hmm. So we paid $50 million less in electric bills than we would have if we'd been paying the other rate structure. So there's such a tremendous benefit. The other benefit is that we have local control over our electric utility. And, there are some, I understand people have different issues. The electric utility serves 42 or 43,000 customers. Mm-hmm. So obviously there's going to be consternation once in a while. And there's definitely, when we do things wrong, we need to fix it. But the local control is a big deal. Having that local control is so huge and monumental because we, the city attempted to change the rate structure 3 or 4 years ago. And it was a pretty significant change.
I remember.
And a bunch of people went to the city council meeting and said, this is crazy, we don't want it. And the city council didn't do it. If that had been PG&E, it would have completely
powerless.
Fallen on deaf ears, right? Mm-hmm. So local control to me is so critically important. I don't think people realize how much that's really going to mean to have local control of our network and internet systems.
I've explained this to a few friends, and they don't get it. They're like, wait, is it high speed? What does it do? It's like it opens up a whole bunch of different opportunities that it's almost overwhelming, like what it does. You say, well, you're going to have really high speed internet, the kind of high speed internet that like some companies that work on the edge that you wouldn't normally find in Redding, that are in the bigger cities, definitely in the Bay Area, they could potentially move up here.
Yeah,
they're going to employ people that make really good incomes.
Oh, it's all, high paying jobs.
Yeah, and this is like key to like some big telecommute stuff, right?
Oh yeah.
So that's just like one layer
Right.
One layer.
You're
In other words,
exactly
it's obviously going to bring income. City's going to, it's going to help the city out. It's going to keep the money more local, because right now the money is leaving the area. There are a handful of people that are employed by the companies that provide the current internet, connections here in the city. And when you think about, like, they say, oh, but these people are going to be unemployed. It's a fraction. It's a fraction versus how many would be employed.
Well, the downtown is such a small part of the total city.
But it's the first phase.
Right.
It's phase one.
Right.
I mean, long term, you have to think that this.
Oh yeah, the goal is to offer the service citywide and see where it goes from there. The downtown is sort of proof of concept, but you're right. It's economy, it's high paying jobs, it's innovation, it's local control and independence and privacy. And man, I don't think people realize how important privacy is, but I do think that privacy, some of these other things will be, a real hot commodity in 5 to 10 years. And I think it'll be something that people really want.
I think the average person just doesn't realize what's going on under the covers with privacy. And I think
not until they get burned.
Yeah. And it's so politicized too. So that's where it starts to get murky. To me, this project, every now and then a project comes along where it's like a litmus test for someone's true intentions. You know what I mean? It's when someone's like, oh, well, I'm against, because most things have a huge subjective sway. So like I said, we could bring in 2 experts and you would listen to both of them and both of them could sway you because the truth is somewhere in the middle. But there are certain projects where it's like, this overwhelmingly benefits the masses, overwhelmingly, and can have far-reaching effects. And so people that are going to be opposed to it, to me, are like, thank you, I'm glad you let me know exactly where you stand.
There's definitely an argument to be made as private versus public, and I understand that argument. The thing is, when it comes to government and government services, what the government does best, besides public safety, is infrastructure. And this is infrastructure. And we just didn't look at it like infrastructure for the longest time. But now it's very obvious that it's infrastructure. So if we want to, right now we're behind, in the average, we're definitely behind in California as far as bandwidth availability and what options we have in the city. We're way behind. But we could jump into a leadership position, real leadership position. And right now, I think that's so critical. It's so important for that 21st century economy, the gig economy. And that's the thing, is we can control our destiny in this respect. The government sort of creates fosters the healthy soil, for the plants to grow in, the businesses and the residents. I think this just creates a better foundation for things to grow on.
I agree, because back when I was talking a little bit before about I'm unabashed capitalist, but there is a role for government. It's not. That's why I don't like it's all or nothing. It's left or it's right. It's like, no, the truth is somewhere in between. And right now we don't have options, and they're stifled and they're expensive and the quality's not there. If we lived in a place where there were 10 different ISPs, that might be a little bit different. But that's actually if the city takes over infrastructure, that's actually what ends up happening, is more people get to offer the service, right? That actually will bring the marketplace.
It depends on which network style, which options the city would choose.
Oh, okay. So that's definitely
an option.
I imagine though that you're leaning towards the option that says, hey, let service providers come in and piggyback the infrastructure and let the marketplace determine the best value, right? So,
yeah. Here's the thing. I'll come back on at some point. Okay. I don't want to. I would go deep into what my thoughts are on this, but I want to present that information to the city council and see where it goes from there.
Sure.
And make sure.
Well, you're the vice mayor. You
still just 1 of 5.
You got to do certain things. I don't have to. I'm just
that's true.
I'm just Joe Public. I can say whatever I want. Devil may care.
Yep.
But anyway, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to when you come back and let us know. Next time you come on, I want to talk about the solar project and where that is.
Oh yeah.
But I know that you got to go.
Okay.
And I really appreciate that you stopped by and brought us up to speed on stuff with the city. And I hope that you'll come back soon. Let us know how it went with the city council, and kind of, just keep us abreast of what's going on in the state of the city and things like that. So thank you very much. Again,
no, that's great.
It was
Vice
Mayor Sun's out, guns out.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Appreciate it coming on. Until
Okay.
next time.
Yep.
Bye.